Nurse number 18 didn't come to deliver the sunflowers today. No one bothered me, so I should have been happy. But for some reason, I felt increasingly irritable, and the feeling grew so intense that I lost control. My eyes turned red, and I violently smashed a glass cup. I attacked everything in sight. I looked around at all the living things. Finally, I grabbed a mouse with precision and force. The nurse said, "Human life isn't something to be trampled on. Not just others' lives, but my own as well. They're all equally precious." She always says those nonsensical things, trying to reform me. She even said she wanted to be my friend and called me Lily on our first meeting. What a ridiculous little fool. My hands moved swiftly, dispatching the mouse with ease. The redness in my palm was warm, as if trying to soothe my emotions. But the irritation only grew stronger. Whispers from others suddenly reached my ears. "She's just graduated. How could something like this happen to her? Ugh, I dare not even open that video. Those three beasts raped her and then recorded it." What's even more infuriating is that those beasts were released without any punishment. I walked toward them and interrupted their conversation. "Is number 18 off today?" This was the first time in 3 years that I had spoken to someone else voluntarily. I tried to soften my expression and even forced out a smile, though it wasn't very attractive. But they still scattered in fear, even dropping their phones on the ground. I tugged at the corner of my mouth. It was just as I expected. They said they wouldn't discriminate against patients. But when they heard that I had blood on my hands, the entire ward avoided me like the plague. I didn't have to deal with those hypocritical faces, and I was finally left in peace. But this year, that newly graduated nurse 18 showed up. Every day, she shoved a bunch of sunflowers into my hands and smiled sweetly, saying she wanted to be my friend. She was so annoying. I threw all those ugly flowers away. I hated her, hated the carefree dimples on her cheeks when she smiled. But now, where had she gone? I wasn't worried about her. I just wanted to make sure she wouldn't come bother me again. My gaze fell on the phone on the ground, and the image on the screen made my pupils contract. The victim in the video was none other than nurse number 18. The camera was clearly focused on her face. Her pupils trembled slightly, and her eyes dilated rapidly. That expression was all too familiar to me. It meant she was in a state of extreme fear. The young girl was forcibly dragged into an expensive black car. The sunflower in her hands was impatiently flung aside by the man, its petals scattering on the ground. The camera was aimed at her face, recording the most painful and brutal thing she was enduring in the world. She was crying hysterically. Later, 3 men found her too noisy. They swiftly cut her throat, leaving her mute. Finally, a man's furious shout echoed from off-screen, "Damn it! How could she be so weak? She's already dead?" She lay like a broken, blood-stained doll, carelessly discarded from the car. According to the investigation, the victim, son, would walk this route every day to the flower shop. The suspect had mapped out the victim's movements, ambushed her on this road, and tortured her for over 10 hours. So the one on the 18th was named Sun. Such a stupid name, it suits her perfectly. If she hadn't gone to buy flowers for me, none of this would have happened. I watched the footage without emotion, continuing to handle the mouse. The fruit knife suddenly felt much heavier. I couldn't handle the mouse neatly at all. There were even many small cuts on my hands. Injuring myself with the knife was something I had never tolerated or allowed to happen before. But now, it just happened out of the blue. Why? Is it because of Xiang Sun? It felt like a dull knife suddenly piercing my chest. It wasn't very painful, just heavy, pressing down on me so I couldn't breathe. What was even more uncontrollable was that this heavy pain was spreading from my heart throughout my limbs. I was in agony. I didn't understand why I was feeling this way. I slammed the meat paste in my hands onto the ground and covered my head, screaming. The birds in the trees screech and fly away. I gasp for air and slowly lift my head. Among the rows of small, grid-like hospital rooms, my room stands out. In this gray and white mental hospital, only my room is brightly lit with large patches of yellow. I told a small lie. I actually picked up the sunflowers that had been thrown away. Like a thief who had stolen things all his life and finally had something of his own. After the initial disbelief came fear, the urge to hide them all away. But now, even this little bit of bright yellow was being taken away and destroyed. How dare they? Emergency broadcast, a patient has escaped from the city mental hospital. According to investigations, it is Lillian, the evil woman who strangled her father to death 3 years ago. I listened to the voice coming from the driver's phone, a mocking curve forming at the corners of my masked mouth. My gaze returned to the documents in my hands. Among the 3 beasts, Hunter was the first to act, the one who dragged Sun into the car. Born with a silver spoon in his mouth, the spoiled young master grew tired of his smooth, uneventful life. In pursuit of thrills and the macabre, he would stop at nothing. I curled my lips slightly. Such a brainless brute was the lowest scum in our circle of madmen. I entered the bar where Hunter was with a large suitcase. I located Hunter's private room and heard the voices inside. I want excitement. Do you understand? Not this kind of trash that can only twist around a few times. I kicked open the door and walked in under the gaze of everyone present. Hunter froze for a moment before grabbing a bottle and throwing it at me. Who the hell are you? Daring to barge into my private room? I dodged it and spoke with a smirk. Hunter doesn't need to know who I am. All you need to know is that I have a thrilling game that will satisfy Hunter. Under the influence of alcohol, Hunter's face turned bright red. He pushed the bunny girl off him and stared at me with interest. Oh. What's so fun? I opened my suitcase, took out a packet of powder, and poured it into Hunter's glass. Drink this, and Hunter will fall into a deep sleep for an hour. I'll hide you in the suitcase and take you to enjoy an hour of paradise. I wonder if Hunter dares to take the bet. Hunter stared at the spiked drink, narrowing his eyes slightly, seeming hesitant. I stepped forward, locking eyes with him. Hunter isn't scared, is he? The Hunter family controls everything, and there are so many people here to witness it. Do you think I'd dare to sell Hunter out? Even the king of hell wouldn't scare me. Hunter snorted, picked up the glass, and downed it in one gulp. I laughed along with him. Laughing at his stupidity, laughing at his arrogance. I thought I'd have to argue for a while, even prepared to force-feed him. But I never expected him to hand over his life so easily for the sake of some so-called thrill. In front of all those spoiled brats, I shoved Hunter into the suitcase. I easily shook off the bodyguards from the Hunter family who had followed us. Now, he was as good as dead. When Hunter woke up, I was boiling pig's feet. He found that his clothes had been stripped off, leaving him only in his underwear, naked and bound to a chair. He flew into a rage and shouted, "Where the hell did you bring me? You bitch, didn't you hear me? How many lives do you think you have to dare tie me up?" I paused, stirring the pig's feet, and turned my head impatiently. "You're so noisy." I grabbed the kitchen knife, sharpened it casually, and walked toward Hunter. Hunter mocked me with a sneer and spat on the ground. "Who are you trying to scare? Come on, let's see if you dare to touch me." Before he could finish, I swung the knife down. Ugh! He stared at me in terror, unable to make a sound. I spat on the ground and turned away expressionlessly. If I hadn't promised Sun, I would have killed him myself. Hunter let out a wail from the depths of his throat, his expression finally filled with terror, and the smell of urine seeped from his lower body. Not enough. I shook my head, playing with the kitchen knife in my hand. I disabled his hands and feet, rendering him unable to walk. The pot emitted a ding sound at the right moment. I smiled slightly. The pig's feet were finally cooked. I simmered the pig's feet with a large amount of konjac, combining the gelatin and collagen to create a human skin mask specifically for Hunter. Even his closest friends wouldn't recognize him. I knocked out the face-swapped Hunter and dressed him in a new outfit. I took him to find the second beast, Jasper. In that video, Jasper, this refined villain, used the most brutal and savage methods to leave numerous wounds on Sun's body. He had a good-looking appearance. Even though he was a depraved beast, under the guise of his handsome exterior, he was still highly sought after. According to the records, Jasper pretended to be bisexual, but in reality, he was impotent and could only derive pleasure from torturing others. He would bring his lovers back to his villa and subject them to brutal torture using various instruments. He seemed somewhat intelligent, but not very. This was exactly what I wanted. I left Hunter at the entrance of Jasper's villa. When Jasper saw Hunter, he froze for a moment. He looked around hesitantly for a long time before finally succumbing to temptation and dragging Hunter inside. I smiled from the shadows. Such a unconscious and flawed doll. It was a fatal temptation for Jasper. This is criminal psychology, something in the genes. Moreover, Jasper had been spoiled rotten by his family, so even if he committed the gravest of crimes, the Jasper family would come to clean up his mess. He couldn't resist this temptation. Calculating the time, Hunter would soon wake up. When he opened his eyes, he would see himself transformed from a torturer into a fish on a cutting board. And his accomplices, who had been his allies in crime, were now holding various tools and gesturing toward him, just as they had done to Sun. He tried to open his mouth to curse and explain, but found that he could no longer speak. He tried to reach out to resist, to run away, but found that his limbs were powerless. In that moment, his helplessness and fear were amplified to the extreme. The violence he had inflicted on Sun would return to him 1,000-fold, both mentally and physically. Wasn't this the thrill he had always sought? Thinking about it, I felt he deserved it. I had promised Sun I would never take another life. But I never promised I wouldn't use someone else to do it. Under my human mask, I had hidden a miniature camera. It was currently streaming live footage of the villa to the entire internet. As I imagined, Jasper was selecting the right tools. Just as they had done to Xiang Sun. Jasper used each one on Hunter. He didn't realize that the lamb being slaughtered was Hunter. Hunter's body was covered in wounds, but he had nowhere to escape. With no way out, Hunter let out a terrified whimper from his throat. He watched helplessly as everything he had done to others was now being done to him. Comments flashed across the screen. Unwatchable, is this even allowed to be broadcast? I sent this Jasper, the rich second-generation guy from the recent news about the brutal assault on a woman? Did I see that right? Is Jasper pressing a hot iron against that person's face? Under the heat, Hunter's human skin mask began to peel off. The entire internet was stunned. Jasper's movements froze, and he stood there dumbfounded as if struck by lightning. When the Hunter family arrived, Hunter was already dead. His wounds were horrifyingly brutal. Hunter was the sole heir of the Hunter family and was supposed to inherit the family business. The Hunter family looked at Jasper as if he were already dead. But when everyone thought the Hunter family would never forgive Jasper, he was once again acquitted. It was said that the Hunter family had voluntarily written a statement of forgiveness. The entire internet was baffled. 3 days later, Jasper's remains were discovered in the wilderness. They had been devoured by wild dogs, leaving nothing but a skeleton. As I watched the news footage of the Hunter family consoling the Jasper family, I scoffed. The Hunter family really couldn't finish the job. If anyone had investigated further, they would have discovered that so-called wild dog had actually come from the Hunter family's dog kennel. The only one left who had harmed Sun was Connor. His records were completely blank. In the video of the attack on Sun, Connor remained motionless throughout. He sat arrogantly in the main seat, indifferently watching the two mad dogs brutalize Sun. Clearly, he had no interest in Sun and cared nothing for her life or death. Then why did he instigate the two to attack Sun? What was his true purpose? I stared at the indifferent almond-shaped eyes in the photo. As if he cared about nothing, yet as if he was obsessed with something. He was far more terrifying than Hunter and Jasper. And I wasn't in a hurry to act. Someone as intelligent as Connor wouldn't have failed to notice that Hunter and Jasper had both met with accidents, and that someone was pulling the strings behind the scenes. Out of instinct for my own kind, I waited at home for him to come knocking. 1 day, 2 days. On the 3rd day, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there stood a face even more vivid and cold than the one in the photo. Connor's almond-shaped eyes were filled with laughter. Like an old friend he hadn't seen in years, he walked into my home with ease. He said, "Lily, it's been a long time." I smiled and poured him a glass of water. It's been a long time. Connor and I were acquaintances. The first time we met was in his father's basement. At the time, I was a child, pinned down on a wooden board, enduring the worst cruelty a grown man could inflict. I didn't know what I had done wrong, only that my own father was begging Connor's family like a dog. He had handed me over to Connor's family like a gift. Connor was hiding by the door, watching his father abuse me. His eyes, which had initially been filled with curiosity, turned into eager anticipation. Finally, one day, he stood behind his father, raised a knife, and without hesitation, stabbed his father through the back, piercing his heart precisely. He wasn't trying to save me. He wanted to possess me alone. He touched my face, saying with obsession that I looked just like his deceased sister. He intended to imprison me completely. I obediently pressed my face against his palm and whispered seductively. Young master, true control isn't about ropes, it's about taming. If you let me go and I still come back to you willingly, that's when you'll know I truly belong to you. He agreed. I will never forget what my biological father said when I returned home. Why did you come back? Being able to climb into the Connor family is a huge blessing. Don't cause trouble. I smiled and reassured him, saying I had just come back to celebrate his birthday. I gave him a valuable leather belt. Then I cooked a bowl of soup for him myself. Happy birthday, my dear father. When he was too weak to move, I used the belt I had given him to take his life in the most torturous way possible. I asked Uncle Hat for an autopsy. I wanted to see if his heart was cold, if it was black. To my surprise, despite his pride in buying women, his heart was warm, it was red. Connor didn't wait for me to return. Because I was diagnosed with mental illness, Uncle Hat had me locked up in a mental hospital. I listened quietly as Connor recounted the past. He spoke until his mouth was dry, then drank the water in his hand. Lily, when I found out about Son, do you know how excited I was? I knew that once she was dead, you would come out of the mental hospital to find me. I don't care about the lives of others, Lily. I only care about you. He laughed carelessly, continuing to spit out the coldest, most venomous words. I was so excited when I heard about Jasper and Hunter's deaths that my whole body was trembling. Because that means we'll meet soon, Lily. Does that count as coming to see me willingly, as you promised? I didn't respond to his words, I just silently counted to 3 in my mind. 3, 2, 1. My pupils trembled slightly, and my fists clenched tightly. That medicine was something I had personally placed in the water cup. How could Connor be sitting there unharmed? Lily, you don't really think I drank the water, do you? Connor spread his hands, showing me the wet stain on his sleeve. A rose with thorns is even more beautiful when crushed. Lily, now it's my turn. He counted softly, 3, 2, 1, drink. I suddenly felt dizzy, my consciousness fading, and I collapsed helplessly on the sofa. I could only watch his lips move. Vaguely, I seemed to hear his voice. Stupid girl, do you remember? When you took the cup just now, I touched your hand. 3 years have passed. It's time for you to return to my basement. The Gu family holds absolute power. No one knew that in the corner of this glamorous villa, there was such a dark and bloody place. But I knew this place well. 3 years ago, I escaped from here, stepping over 2 corpses. 3 years later, I returned here because of another life. I moved my wrist slightly, and the chains on my body clanged. Connor stood before me with a glass of red wine, caressing my face greedily. Lily, you're finally back. 3 years ago, I believed your lies. Now I believe nothing. I don't want your willingness. I only want you locked away by my side forever. He gripped my chin, forcing me to face the life-sized mannequin in the distance. It was a stone sculpture of a human form. It had a face that bore a striking resemblance to mine, yet its demeanor was entirely different from mine. It wore a white dress, smiling pure and gentle. I, on the other hand, was filled with bitterness and had long forgotten how to smile. Is that your sister? I asked. Connor smiled dreamily, leaning his face against the statue's shoulder. My sister Cora. She was the kindest person in the world to me. Lily, I've been searching for so many years, and you're the one who looks most like her. You're a gift from heaven. This time, I won't let you escape. He looked at the statue with deep and sincere emotion. Like a child who had suffered so much, finally able to lean against a warm embrace for a moment of peace. I asked, how did Cora die? Connor fell silent, a fleeting look of confusion crossing his eyes, as if he didn't remember either. He searched his memory in vain, then laughed coldly, you don't need to know that. All you need to know is that you'll take her place and stay by my side. Don't let me catch you playing any more tricks, Lily. Don't push me to my limits. How could I? I'm a good girl. I laughed along with him, but as I laughed, I picked up the iron chain as thick as a bowl. With all my strength, I struck the sculpture again and again, even as my palms were ground raw and bleeding. The stone statue, which Connor had repeatedly wiped clean and carefully tended to, cracked open under the blows, revealing the bones inside. No! Connor's eyes widened in horror, and he trembled as he reached out to cover the gaping wound. Connor's eyes turned red, and he trembled as he placed his hands over the crack in the statue. It felt like his heart had been torn open, and he desperately tried to cover the ugly bones. I glanced at my blood-soaked palms and spoke the most vicious words in the softest voice. Connor, so you hid her here, did you? The skeleton twisted into an odd position. Such a beautiful statue, crafted with such meticulous attention to detail. It required someone still conscious, maintaining a smile, watching as their body was completely covered in plaster. The plaster flowed into their nostrils, filling their body until they suffocated to death. After all, the expressions of the living are always the most vivid. From the moment I saw this statue, I knew there was someone inside. The more Connor cared about something, the more I destroyed it. Isn't that exactly what I learned from him? Connor said he only cared about his own goals, not others' lives. But I destroyed his sister's statue. I destroyed the last sanctuary in his heart. Yet he charged at me like a cornered beast, choking my neck. I stared at him calmly, my blood-stained hands slapping his face in defiance. In this standoff, both of us were playing a game. The stakes were who was crazier. Clang! The sculpture shattered completely behind us. Bones crashed heavily onto the ground. Sister! Connor suddenly let go, almost instinctively reaching out to catch it. Following his movement, I saw the scars on his arm. They looked like old knife wounds and burns, now perfectly integrated into his skin. And on Cora's finger bones, there was a large pigeon egg-sized diamond ring. I froze. I had seen this ring before in the news. It was designed by a top designer, the only one of its kind in the world. Mr. Connor had purchased it and given it to his fiancée. Connor. I had a hunch, and suddenly burst into laughter. Laughter turned into tears. I looked at Connor mockingly, as if he were a pitiful creature. I said, Connor, admit it. There's no such person as Cora. I had always wondered who the sister Connor kept mentioning was, since he was an only child. Was she an illegitimate daughter? It wasn't until this moment that I was completely certain. There was no such person as Cora. When Mr. Connor had possessed me, he had been calling out the name of his missing fiancée. So I guessed. The person who looked like me wasn't Cora at all. It was Mr. Connor's missing fiancée, Connor's future stepmother. Cora was a fantasy Connor created when he was abused by his future stepmother as a child. In his imagination, there was an angelic sister who would always protect him and hold him in her arms when he was hurt. He constantly brainwashed himself, embellishing the image of this sister. Every time he recalled those painful scenes, the only face he saw was his stepmother's hideous one. He inserted the sister into the scenes, replacing the stepmother's face with a beautified version of hers. He hated his stepmother, so he suffocated her with lime. He loved his sister, so he wiped the statue every day. This family isn't normal. And neither am I. Because of a similar face, I suffered all this for no reason, driven mad by circumstances. The glass of water I gave Connor at my house had nothing in it. I used myself as bait, willingly entering the game, to find Connor's true weakness. Then, I would completely destroy his psychological defenses. Until I drove him to the brink of despair. Let him taste the helplessness and pain son felt. I kicked Connor and ordered him in the voice of a cruel stepmother, "You little bastard, unlock it." Connor reflexively curled into a ball and trembled as he unlocked the chains. Then he quickly darted to the corner, staying far away from me. I grabbed the chains and swung them back, striking him. His expensive shirt was torn to shreds, and his muscular chest bloomed with blossoms of blood. Connor clutched his head, emitting painful whimpers, but in his extreme state of stress, he dared not move an inch. He must be in so much pain, yet he dared not struggle. My eyes grew cold, and I suddenly regretted that the useless chains were in my hands. If only it were a whip covered in thorns. I would have sliced it across his body, making him endure 1,000 times the pain. That was what he deserved. As Connor was about to faint, I quickly dropped the chains and pulled him into my arms. I wiped the cold sweat from his forehead with the tenderness of an older sister. "Connie, don't cry. I'm here." How could it hurt so much? Who hurt Connie like this? Connor trembled all over and buried his head in my chest, looking so wronged. "Sister, that woman hit me again." The next moment, I slapped him across the face and resumed my role as the cruel stepmother. This went on until Connor completely broke down. Connor occasionally regained consciousness. But his subconscious was obsessed with the warmth of his sister. During my repeated physical training, only when he obeyed the evil stepmother would the gentle older sister appear to protect him. So he dared not resist, not because he was afraid of the stepmother, but because he feared losing his sister completely. When Connor woke up again, he was already locked in a cage. A video of Sun was playing on the large screen. I sat on the sofa chair beside him, like the judge in the video, like a god high above, deciding the fate of others. Connor looked at the video in confusion, waiting for me to give orders. I stared at him coldly, saying nothing. Time passed slowly, and Connor began to grow anxious. If the stepmother didn't torment him, his sister would never appear again. What do I need to do? Just tell me. You can whip me with a whip, cut me with a knife, I won't resist. Come on, hurry up. Give her back to me. I remained silent, but this time my gaze fell on the video. Connor seemed to have realized something. He mimicked the actions in the video, picking up the tools from the cage and striking himself repeatedly. His eyes were fixed on me. He was searching my face for any trace of pity or compassion. But this time, there was nothing. I shook my head and silently opened the cage. He knelt before me, screaming in despair. What do I have to do? Tell me. I led him to the top floor of the villa. Below lay a vast expanse of thorns, and a stone statue of a soldier holding a dagger with sharp spikes. Connie, why won't you believe me? I suddenly began to cry, calling out his name. I'm already dead. Look, these are my bones. Connie, I died in such pain and suffering. Don't you remember what you did to me? Why did you do that to me? The stone statue is so cold and suffocating. I was so scared, but you didn't care about my life and kept pouring plaster over my head. No. It wasn't like that. Sister, listen to me. Connor, with bloodshot eyes, struggled to crawl over and grabbed my pant leg. I turned away and stared at him with an accusing expression. As he neared madness, I handed him the skeleton. Connor instinctively flung it away. By the time he reacted, the skeleton had already fallen into the thorn bushes below, shattering instantly. I cried even harder. That was my bone. Why did you throw it away? Connie, I'm so cold and in pain. I'm going to disappear. You'll never see me again. At that moment, Connor could no longer distinguish between reality and fantasy. His consciousness had died the moment I exposed him. What remained was nothing more than a hollow shell. This puppet was desperately trying to hold on to sister, as she was the only light in his life. He could only muster his last ounce of strength and leap off the edge of the rooftop. Sister, don't cry. I'll go get the bones back for you. I coldly wiped away my tears, watching his body land precisely on the sharp blades. The position had been carefully calculated. It seemed that Connor was fully conscious when he jumped. He knew all of this was fake and willingly chose to die in his own fantasy. I exhaled a long breath of pent-up air and crouched on the ground, hugging myself tightly. The world is so vast, yet I am so small. There are so many happy people, but I am the only one missing. In a way, Connor was luckier than me. Because his sister never existed, and her disappearance was painless. But Xiang's son was on his way to buy flowers for me, and he died in such agony. I covered my aching chest, crying and laughing, and finally rolled on the ground. The sun today was unusually bright, like a gigantic sunflower, carelessly trying to warm everyone. I got up from the ground. Madmen cannot be sane. Because sane madmen cannot survive. I went to Xiang's son's grave. The incense had not yet burned out, and the flowers were in full bloom. It seemed like someone had just been there. A large cardboard box was placed before the grave, filled with Xiang's son's belongings. Once the incense burned to a certain height, the flames would completely consume the box. Burn these things for Xiang's son. I placed the sunflower before the grave, opened my mouth, but didn't know what to say. She had given me so many sunflowers. This was the first time I had ever given her one. My gaze inadvertently fell on the items inside the box. A worn notebook with many yellowed photographs. At first glance, I was speechless. A little girl in a neat school uniform, with pigtails and a bright smile. Every day, she had a nutritious lunchbox and colorful hairpins in her hair. She loved standing up for others and secretly changed her grades when she failed exams. She was often called to the principal's office. These were all photos of me when I was a child. Some showed me pouting, others smiling, and some drinking strawberry milk. How did Sun have these? There were neat, delicate handwritten notes on the back of the photos. She looked at me today, but I still didn't have the courage to say hello. Lily was so cute arguing with the teacher that she broke the chalk. Does she know I bought the strawberry milk for her? I saved up my money just for her. Next time I'll definitely tell her my name. The words are densely packed, each line telling a story. These little things reveal the subtle emotions of a young girl. It seems like she's known me for a very long time. But I can't remember anything from the past. I searched through my memories, but couldn't find any trace of Sun. Those were things that happened too long ago. Back then, my mother was still alive, and I had someone to protect me. I was like other children, with a complete family and a normal school life. My hands weren't stained with blood, I wasn't a madman yet. It's okay. It's not too late to know now. I put the photo back into the box. I reached out my hand toward the photo on the tombstone again. Xiang Sun, let's get to know each other again. Hello, my name is Lillian. You can call me Lily. My favorite flower is the sunflower. Xiang Sun's side story. They surrounded me again today. The teacher pretended not to see, so they just ripped open my lunchbox. My mom's food was scattered all over the ground. I'll have to go hungry again for lunch. But they still wouldn't leave me alone. They stepped on the new backpack my mom bought me, leaving shoe prints, and pushed me into the corner of the wall. You're just a skinny, dark-skinned country girl. What gives you the right to be in class with us? I heard you're from the countryside. You've probably never even used a toilet, right? You smell so bad. You can't even speak properly, yet you have the nerve to raise your hand to read your essay. You're not ashamed of yourself. Hey, you dare to glare at us? Let's use glue to stick your eyes shut. I don't understand what I did wrong. Why do I have to endure this unwarranted hostility? I could only curl up tightly and try to avoid their glue sticks. A crack suddenly appeared in the dark corner, letting in a beam of sunlight. A girl in a clean school uniform burst into my line of sight. She held a chair high in her hands, like an angry little lion, and smashed it into the bully in front of me, making him cry. The others were scared and scattered to find the teacher to tattle. The teacher arrived quickly, furious, and shouted her name, Lillian, call your parents to come to school. She shrugged indifferently and stuck her tongue out at me. It's okay, my mom wouldn't dare scold me. She burst into my life with such passion and flair, and no one dared to bully me anymore. But I, because of my own self-consciousness and insecurity, only watched her from afar. I was too shy to approach her. I knew her name was Lillian, she liked strawberry milk, and her chat avatar was a little sun. By the end of the semester, I still hadn't mustered the courage to speak to her. Next semester, I decided. Next semester, I would definitely be her friend. But when the new semester finally began, her seat was empty. I heard her mother had passed away, and her father had transferred her to another school. I would never see her again. Lillian, I remembered her name. It was beautiful, just like her pretty little braids. But she never knew my name was Xiang Sun. Over the next decade, in every dark corner of my life, I would recall that ray of sunshine from when I was 9. The next time I heard about her was in a news report about a college student who murdered her father. The news reported that she had strangled her own father to death and even dug out his heart. Netizens used the most vile words to comment on her, but she just smiled indifferently in front of the media. There was no light left in her eyes, only deep exhaustion and despair. She was no longer the child protected by her mother. She could only let the filth be thrown at her, mocking the keyboard warriors who dared only hide behind their computers. I shook my head frantically, desperately defending her in the comments section. No, that's not who she is. She's not like that. I don't know what she's been through all these years. But she must have suffered a lot. My mother asked me what I wanted to do after graduating from college. And now, I have firmly applied to the hospital where Lillian works, becoming a nurse. After all these years, I finally saw her again. On a vast expanse of green grass, people had gathered around her, forming an involuntary barrier. The nurses looked at me with fear in their eyes and pulled me back, saying, "Don't go near her. That crazy woman has killed someone." I shook my head at them and walked toward her without hesitation. I held a large bouquet of sunflowers in my hands and smiled as I handed them to her. This was a reunion that had spanned over a decade. "Lily. This time, I'll be your sunshine."